All right, everybody, welcome back to First Team Fantasy. We have a very exciting episode here. We're going to be covering the Sunday afternoon games, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, as well as the waiver wire. But first, we have a very exciting announcement. We are now an affiliate with Sleeper, all thanks to Shift's hard work. I want to disclose,
Yeah.
by no means are we saying to go on and join Sleeper. We are strictly saying if you are going to, we do have our code FTF Sports. They will match a deposit up to $100, meaning if you deposit 100, you will then have $200 to play through. And I'm going to let Shift talk through this one, but we did put together a parlay for the Thursday night game that we are very confident in. It will now be on the screen. So, Schiff, if you want to talk through what we put together and kind of what we saw when we were putting it together.
All right. Well, the first one we have is Najee Harris getting over 8.5 receiving yards. We've kind of seen him take over that role again from Jaylen Warren. He's gotten more receptions in the last 2 weeks. In the last week, he got 42 receiving yards. If that continues, he's averaging in the last 5 games 18.4. So I'm very confident that he will be able to get 9 in this one. The next one we have is Nick Folk over 5.5 kicking points. The only week in the last 4 that he was under that was last week, and he got 4 kicking points because they scored 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Do I see the Tennessee Titans scoring 4 touchdowns against the Steelers? No, I don't. I think they come back down to earth a little bit, and I think Nick Folk goes back into his Nick Folk ways, kicking field goals. Give me the 5.5 kicking points. I think that is a lock. Our next one is Derrick Henry, receiving yards over 12.5. He's averaging 13.4 in the last game, which is kind of cutting it a bit close. But in the last 3, he has 19, 16, and 21. I do have some confidence that with them keeping Derrick Henry, with them now fighting for the spot in the AFC South,
Yeah.
they're going to continue to use him.
Yeah.
My next one is DeAndre Hopkins above 50.5 receiving yards. The Steelers are not a very good team at defending the pass. We saw Calvin Ridley have a pretty big day against them, and we just saw DeAndre Hopkins in his first game with Will Levis get over 100 receiving yards. 128, in fact. So I think 50.5 will be doable for him. I think that is a lock. And that goes to our final one, Deontay Johnson, over 58.5 receiving yards in his last 2 games, which were his first 2 of the season. He got 79 and 85.
Yeah.
The weakness of the Tennessee Titans defense is their pass defense, and they just traded away Kevin Byard. So I do believe that this will be a good one for Deontay Johnson. I easily see him getting over 70 receiving yards. So 58.5, that should be easy. And we're just going to do a 5-leg with this one, and that'll be all. I put $5 on it. That'll be to win $83. I think that should be an easy win. Also, to remember, when you are putting these parlays, doing the picks, while it is fun, remember to play responsibly, set a limit. If you need help, there are numbers to call. Don't go too far, and just remember to play responsibly. That's the important thing. Have fun, and hopefully you win. But yeah, with that, we will get right into our games. The first afternoon game that we have was Baltimore going into Arizona and beating the Cardinals 31-24. It wasn't really as close as the score suggested. It was pretty decent in the first half. The Ravens offense was just kind of faltering. Lamar didn't have 18 for 27, 157 yards, a touchdown, 5 attempts on the ground for 17. He got 12 points. The thing to take note of here is Arizona had the 31st ranked rush defense. The Ravens threw the ball 27 times, and they ran the ball 29 times. So next week, they're going up against the Seattle defense, who is kind of the opposite. They're weaker against the pass, and they're fairly decent against the run. So while I still expect to see Gus Edwards to get the volume that he got in this game on the ground, I don't think that it's going to be such a poor showing fantasy-wise and on the stat sheet for all of the pass catchers in Baltimore. I think they will have a bit of an uptick next week. And Lamar will also probably have a better showing. But still, I mean, no turnovers this game. Went out there, got the dub. Ravens are 6-2. Gus Edwards was obviously the star of this one, still only playing 52% of the snaps, but we've pretty much figured out what this Baltimore backfield is. It is going to be pretty much all of the rushing work to Gus Edwards and the little targets out of the backfield that are kind of planned and not just the checkdowns. Those end up going to Justice Hill. Justice Hill is a lot faster and, he makes cuts and gets down the field pretty quickly. Gus finished with 19 attempts, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 receptions, and 14 yards, giving him 29.4 fantasy points in this one. Have a day, Gus Edwards. I think both of these running backs could very well be startable if you're in a pinch for the rest of the year, knowing that Gus gets the volume on the ground, and if they get into a goal line position, rather than do a QB sneak with Lamar Jackson, they're going to hand the ball to their bruiser, and Justice Hill gets the receiving work. He still finished. He got 4 attempts for 15 yards on the ground, 4 catches for 40 yards on 4 targets for 9.5 fantasy points. I mean, he's a guy that you can throw in there and, get somewhere around 6 to 10 in a week. He might finish with a touchdown, so that would help you out. But he's not a guy who will burn you in any regard. He's had some fumble issues, but if he can fix that, which he did not have any fumbles this week, then he will be a lot better off.
Mm-hmm.
Especially seeing that the Ravens did not end up trading for a running back. It'll probably continue to be these two getting everything for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
We had Mark Andrews, 4 catches, 5 targets, 40 yards, 1 touchdown.
Solid week.
Solid week for the amount of passing volume that there was. Only 18 completions, and 4 of them went to Mark. One of them, the 1 touchdown from Lamar, went to him, so you'll have to see that. Moving on to Zay, he played 75% of the snaps, 5 of 7 targets, only 19 yards. Really low ADOT stuff this week. And he got 6.9 points. Obviously, better weeks to come for him. Not worried about him. Odell had 4 targets, did not catch 1 of them. Got very close to getting a touchdown, but there was pass interference, got them to the 1. Gus got another touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, he would have liked to have that back. Odell, I don't know if he's a viable start on any given week. He might be decent this week against Seattle because they're going to need to throw the ball. But I'm not saying they force feed him the ball, but Lamar has stated he wants to get Odell his first touchdown as a Raven. When they get in those situations, he does try to target Odell. I do see a touchdown coming. Whether or not you are starting him that week, I don't know. But I think they kind of want Odell to be their wide receiver too. And I think the guy who might end up taking that spot is honestly Rashad Bateman. He's started coming back to life. He had one of the better catches I've seen from him at all. Lamar kind of underthrew him, and he went back and basically intercepted it from the DB. It was a great catch. He only got 2 targets, caught them both for 34 yards, had 1 rushing attempt for 18 yards, gave him 7.2 points. But the thing that I like to see from him is he's on the field 62% of the snaps compared to 42% for Aguilar and 57% for Odell. So it makes sense that the number 1 or the wide receiver that they drafted in the first round is starting to make his presence felt and show up and be the wide receiver 2 that the Ravens need him to be. If he can continue to do that and his volume grows a little bit, I think he will be a viable fantasy option right now. If you want to stash him or something, I think he might be worth it given how young he is and the sparks that he's shown in the past compared to Nelson Aguilar. He's not saying he's over the hill, nor is Odell Beckham Jr., but given Rashad wasn't traded, he's kind of fighting for a contract and to be one of the pieces of this team's future. So moving along to the Cardinals side of the ball, Josh Dobbs did not have a bad fantasy day actually at all. 25 for 37, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 6 rushing attempts for 26 yards, 1 touchdown, 22.9 fantasy points. A lot of that came after the game was not over, but unwinnable pretty much for the Cardinals, which doesn't matter for fantasy, as we talk about. I said Demercado might be a decent start this week if he ended up being the one getting the volume, which he was. He got 20 attempts for 78 yards, caught 1 pass for 1 yard, which 8.9 points. If he was an emergency start this week, 8.9 points is not terrible considering the things we saw out of guys like Dameon Pierce, and I'm pretty sure he scored the same amount of points or around that, like James Cook. So
yeah,
they were like, it wouldn't have killed you this week is what I'm trying to say. The other running backs only got, one of them got 2 attempts for 5 yards. The other got 2 attempts for 9 yards. Not important to name them because there's only one more week until James Conner is supposed to come back. Have not heard anything regarding any setbacks for him. So as of right now, I'm expecting him to be back in week 10, meaning we only have one more week for Demercado. And that's against the Browns. And we will get there, but yeah. So Trey McBride, we saw have 82% of the snaps, as we said, stepped up in the spot of Zach Ertz missing. Caught 10 of 14 targets.
He's a monster.
For 95 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown was interesting. Forward progress was stopped like 3 times, and the refs were just like,
let him go.
Let him go. I mean, hell, it helped me win in a fantasy league, so I have nothing to say about it. We still won. Have a day. Trey McBride, unfortunately, plays the Browns this upcoming week with quarterback Clayton Tune starting in his first NFL start. So that should be a ride. Hollywood Brown, 6 for 9, 33 yards, saved by a touchdown, 15.3 points, out there 95% of the time. Him, just like McBride, they will be an obvious downgrade with the first start for the rookie quarterback against one of the best, if not the best, defense in the NFL. Michael Wilson, 4 for 6, 58 yards, 9.8 fantasy points, out there 88% of the time. Clear wide receiver 2 on the Cardinals at this point, with Rondale Moore only playing 71% of the snaps. Like I said, more of the gadget guy. He got 2 attempts for 11 yards to go along with 2 catches on 2 targets for 10, finishing with 4.1 points. So we know our main guys as of right now until James Conner comes back. Emari Demercado is the fill-in RB1 in Arizona. Trey McBride is looking good. I don't even know if Zach Ertz will get his role back after he comes back because obviously Trey McBride is the future of this team. Hollywood Brown, I mean, you're starting him. He still gets the volume, got 9 targets. You like to see that. It's going to be tough this week with Clayton Tune in his first start. Michael Wilson, I mean, he's a good stash, but same thing goes with him. He'll be a lot better once and if Kyler gets back. That's pretty much it.
No, 100% agree. It's going into next week. I don't like, honestly, really anyone on the Cardinals if it's going to be Clayton Tune, especially against the Browns. It's just going to be a very
It's
tough
so
week.
hard because I want to and completely write them off, but I tried to do the same thing last week with, the Falcons are a good defense against Will Levis in his first start.
We never know.
We don't know, which is why you can't just entirely write them off. But that's why I'm just saying I'm downgrading them. Yeah. I'm not saying don't start them, panic sit them, but it's one of those things. You kind of have to hold your breath a little bit, and then if they do score bad, then it's like, okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all for that one.
Yeah, that'll take us to the Browns going to Seattle, taking on the Seahawks, a game they lost 20-24. PJ Walker had a PJ Walker day. 15 of 31, 248 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, 6 carries, 27 yards, 12.6 fantasy points. I saw the Browns say, they are hoping Deshaun can return week 9, but it's looking like he may just rest. So he's ready to go week 10 against the Ravens. So we very well may have another PJ Walker week. Jerome Ford did play in this game. They said he would possibly be able to play, and he somehow did get out there for 33% of snaps, 9 carries, 37 yards, a catch for 2 yards on 2 targets, 4.9 fantasy points. Pierre Strong.
Yeah, like I said, he mainly got his run in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So they didn't really.
And this game, we saw all 3 running backs dang near split down the middle. Pierre Strong played 31% of snaps, 10 carries, 41 yards, caught his only target for 41 yards, 9.2 fantasy points. And then Kareem Hunt, a guy that we said if you're going to start one of them, we like Kareem the most. He got the most volume with 35% of snaps, 14 carries, 55 yards, a touchdown, 1 catch for 12 yards on a single target, 13.7 fantasy points, a solid week for him. Again, we've seen Kareem, he's getting the 30 to 40% of snaps. It's just what he's doing with those snaps. He has been decently efficient. I think when Jerome Ford starts to get healthier again, it's going to be Pierre Strong taking that backseat as the number 3 RB. So I do like Kareem. I think he holds a decent fantasy value. And on a week where it's going to be shorthanded, for running backs, he may be a guy you have to start.
Yeah.
Through the air.
I view the backfield right now is kind of like Buffalo, but with a bit more optimism.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of what Jerome Ford will have to get will be from what he earns himself outside of the red zone, because they do tend to they've handed the ball off to Kareem in the red zone for years now, on the goal line for years now. So they trust him at that. But that's not saying they will still, if Jerome Ford is in for the whole drive and they get down to the goal line, they'll turn around and hand it off to Jerome Ford. It's not like in Buffalo where they will just pull James Cook off of the field 90% of the time. If it's a Jerome Ford drive and he's in there, if he doesn't get in a couple times, then they'll pull him out and put Kareem in. But that's the one
caveat.
The upside he has compared to
Yeah.
But yeah, just something I wanted to add.
No, 100% agree with that. And then, the pass catchers, it's kind of been the same story all season. Amari Cooper had a solid game, 6 catches, 89 yards on 11 targets, 14.9 fantasy points. A typical Amari Cooper week. David Njoku had a very solid week, especially for a tight end. 4 catches, 77 yards, a touchdown on 8 targets, 17.7 fantasy points. Again, David Njoku's right around those guys. He's on the fringe. What is he now? He's the tight end 16. He's only hasn't missed. He just had the bye week. It's tough. One thing to note is he had 3 single-digit games to start the season, and then in his last 4 games, he's been single digits once, which was against the Niners. So, he's coming off 2 solid weeks, 10.4 against the Colts, 17.7 against the Seahawks. I like David Njoku. They're going to be playing the Cardinals, who will be starting a rookie quarterback against this Browns defense. So we'll have to see how that one goes.
I've heard, I don't know how accurate it is, I've heard things about DTR getting the start this week. So if that were to happen, I think with the Cardinals, you kind of have to downgrade everyone a little bit.
Yeah,
especially Amari Cooper.
agree.
We saw what happened in that game, and the Cardinals offense or the Cardinals defense is not the Ravens defense, so I'm not expecting an absolute just goose egg damn near from Amari, but it will be rough.
No, 100% agree with that. And then, the only other receiver to catch a pass this game was Elijah Moore. 2 catches for 30 yards on 5 targets, 5 fantasy points. He's only broken double digits 1 time. He gets solid targets. That's the thing. His past 3 games, 7 targets, 5 targets. It's just, I don't know. Now, I mean, they just traded Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's one less receiver. He played like 80% of snaps, didn't even see a target in this game. So, I mean, now there's even less competition there. But, with Deshaun being out, and yeah, if they do turn to DTR, even more, I don't like the Elijah Moore start. So,
No.
it's just, yeah, he's talented, he's young, but we just haven't seen him take that step forward just yet that we were kind of hoping to see this season. And then the Seahawks side of the ball wasn't the prettiest on the ground, at least. Geno Smith, 23 of 37, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 2 carries for -3 yards, 15.86 fantasy points. What, you like the 2 carries, -3 yards?
Those
15.86.
stat lines always make me laugh.
Yeah, Geno's not a guy. Last season, he was a guy you could start week in and week out. He was having a huge season. He's been solid this season. He's able to get, the main weapons, the ball, so they're holding fantasy value. But Geno's not a guy that I'm looking to start. Ken Walker kind of had a rough game. I mean, he ran the ball 8 times for 66 yards, and you kind of wonder why you only ran it 8 times, especially when he runs that efficient.
I mean, it is the Browns' rush defense, though, which is tough.
No, for sure. Absolutely. But I mean, I'm just 8 carries, 66 yards. He had a catch for 4 yards on 2 targets, 8 fantasy points. Only played 41% of snaps. The first time we have seen Zach Charbonnet get some big snap share here.
Ken was questionable going into this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Charbonnet saw success running the ball. He had 5 carries for 53 yards. They ran almost 120 yards on 11 carries on the Browns defense. I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's very efficient. Yes, Charbonnet saw a bit of an increased run. He had 2 catches for 11 yards on 2 targets, 8.4 fantasy points, 59% of snaps. Again, Ken Walker was banged up coming into this game, so we didn't expect him to play a full workload. I'm sure as he gets back to 100%, he's going to return as at least, 65, 70% of snaps, and Charbonnet will go back down. But it does show, if Ken Walker were to miss time, Charbonnet is a very capable player that can come in and be a solid fantasy asset on your team. So if you have Ken Walker and Charbonnet is available, he is a very good handcuff to have. We saw DK Metcalf get the most targets he's seen all season, and I was kind of surprised to see, DK's only seen 10 targets twice this season.
I mean, it's not hard to believe. I do have him on my dynasty team. And about once a week, I get a notification that DK Metcalf is questionable to return from the game. He is in the blue medical tent about once a week. Yeah. So, no, it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't, as much as I hate to say that.
Yeah. I mean, he had a solid week for 14 targets. You would hope for more, but he caught 5 of them, 67 yards, 11.7 fantasy points. Didn't kill you by any means. A solid week. Something you can live with, at least. Someone who really exploded this week was Tyler Lockett, and I'm sure Tyler Lockett owners were very happy to see it. He saw 9 targets, caught 8 of them, 81 yards and a touchdown, 22.1 fantasy points. And that's more along the lines of the Tyler Lockett we're expecting to see. Is, maybe not a 22-point week every single week, but we're used to him getting at least, 5 or 6 catches, 50, 60 yards. We're used to 10 to 12 every week with the ability to get you these 22-point weeks. So, I mean,
one thing I'd like to note is Tyler Lockett runs primarily out of the slot, as does Josh Downs. And this is 2 weeks in a row that we've seen the Browns get pretty tore up by slot wide receivers. So it still doesn't give me much hope for anything coming out of Arizona next week. But for weeks beyond that, like, for example, the week after that, when you said the Ravens play the Browns, I do believe.
Week 10, yeah.
In Baltimore. that should be a pretty good game for Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
He runs primarily out of the slot. I mean, as does Mark Andrews. So it's like, these are little things to pick up on when you see 2 weeks in a row, guys absolutely tear this team apart out of the slot. It's like maybe guys who played in that position. It's just, when you pay attention to the little things like that, it could lead to success.
Yeah. No, 100% agree with that. And then, to quickly finish off the Seahawks, JSN, Jackson Smith and Njigba, 4 targets, caught 3 of them, 36 yards, a touchdown, 12.6 fantasy points, 66% of snaps.
The game-winning touchdown with like less than a minute on the clock. So shouts out to you. I needed that win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's getting, he's getting more involved and his snap percentage is going up. So, JSN's one of those rookie receivers where his stock is steadily on the rise. Someone else whose stock is on the rise, Jake Bobo. No. I got to shout out Jake Bobo again, though. Come on. 2 catches, 23 yards on 2 targets. He ran it once for 3 yards. He runs a 4.99. I don't know why they're giving him rushes, but it is what it is. He caught a touchdown, 10.6 fantasy points, 31% of snaps. He's not a guy that you should look to roster because he's the 4th receiver on this depth chart, but he's a guy that we all root
Chris
for.
Hogan.
Oh, come on. Chris Hogan, Danny Amendola, Jake Bobo. He's in a pod, man.
Jake Bobo's a little bigger than Amendola, but yeah, no, that's with no importance. So, no, is that all you have for that one?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. With that, we'll move right along to the next one, where the Bengals went into Santa Clara and unfortunately beat the Niners 31-17. It has been very apparent that the Niners not having Trent Williams, is affecting them heavily. It's kind of obvious. You have Brock Purdy, who, it's always been a question as to whether he's like, we saw what he did last year and coming into this year, it's like, oh, is he just a system quarterback? Well, regardless, you take a quarterback like him and you take their starting left tackle away, it has quite a bit of effect. And one of the better, if not,
he's probably
I
the
can't
best
say
left
best
tackle.
because the best left tackle, but I was saying as far as yards after catch receivers go, obviously that's Tyreek Hill, but one of the top ones in the game, Deebo Samuel, you take him away entirely, hello cat, and that changes a lot. You take those 2 factors out of anything, and it's going to greatly hurt a team. So it doesn't surprise me that San Francisco is struggling right now the way they are. This bad, then the interceptions from Purdy and how fast he cleared concussion protocol was all very interesting, but he hasn't been playing well. And the Bengals, coming off of a bye, have been picking it up.
Yeah.
So we'll see where they go with it. Joe Burrow, 28 for 32, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, 6 attempts for 43 yards, finishing with 27.6 points. Finally got what you drafted him for. Yeah. And Joe Mixon had his best day of the year also, 16 attempts for 87 yards and a touchdown, caught 3 passes on 3 targets for 23 yards, 20 points even. Finally, Joe Burrow got home. Irv Smith Jr., still not looking his way. I'm just going to skip over him entirely to save everybody's time. Jamar Chase is back.
Yeah.
Like we've known this, but 10 catches on 12 targets for 100 yards and a touchdown. But also, unfortunately, ran the ball twice for -8 yards. So he finished with 25.2 instead of 26.
Yeah.
T. Higgins is still not fully back to his role, it seems. He played 67% of the snaps to Tyler Boyd's 86. T caught 5 of 6 passes for 69 yards, 11.9 points. So he out-targeted Boyd, but Boyd caught 3 of 3 for 40 and a touchdown. So you got the red zone target that, T. Higgins kind of got left out in that wide receiver room. Even, what the hell is that guy's name? Isiova?
I'm not even going to try.
even he's getting touchdowns and T. Higgins. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
I mean, I traded away T. Higgins for the very reason that it's just frustrating. I don't understand how talented he is, and he just hasn't been getting home as far as fantasy goes. And this is not the first time we've seen guy whose name cannot be pronounced get in the end zone for the Bengals, where T. Higgins was on the field. And same with Tyler Boyd. And I'm just like, why is T. Higgins not getting these red zone targets? And these other guys are. But you got to keep rolling with him.
Yeah.
Still a decent day of production despite not getting the touchdown when the other 3 wide receivers did.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about it. Not too much more to go over on the Bengals. You have your main people and you start them. If you're at a point where, since they're off bye for the rest of the year and you're in a sticky situation with a wide receiver, like someone got hurt, for example, Drake London may or may not be playing this week. You need someone to throw in. You have Tyler Boyd. He's been decent and he's gotten above double-digit fantasy points a few times this year. He's definitely capable, and yeah, it's not the worst pivot or the worst option to throw in case of a backup. You need an emergency. Yeah, hopefully T. Higgins starts doing T. Higgins things because it's just disappointing.
Yeah.
But on to the Niners side of the ball, which for some was very good. Brock Purdy did not have a bad fantasy. He 22 for 31, 365 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, 6 attempts for 57 yards. Then he finished with 20.3 fantasy points. I mean,
he's human.
He is, but it's just the interceptions in the last 2 games. It's 4, and it's like, wow. I don't know, but you're still seeing, CMC, great week. George Kittle, great week. Ayuk, pretty good week. CMC, 12 attempts for 54 yards, a touchdown, 6 catches on 7 targets for 64 yards, another touchdown, 29.8 fantasy points. The Christian McCaffrey experience. Drafted him 1-2 overall. You're very happy. Other Niners running backs aren't worth mentioning in this game, obviously. George Kittle caught 9 passes on 11 targets for 149 yards. Finished with 23.9 fantasy points. Have a day, George Kittle.
Yeah.
And Brandon Ayuk, 5 catches on 9 targets for 109 yards. So, taking a look at what Brock Purdy did and how it breaks down. Christian McCaffrey had the 64 receiving yards. George Kittle had 149. So that's 213 right there. No, yeah, it is. And then you add Brandon Ayuk's 109. So 322 of Brock Purdy's 365 yards went to those 3 guys. I think it's very safe to say, and just to throw in there, Juwan Jennings played 85% of the snaps and did not get a target. Ray McLeod got the other 2 receptions from Brock Purdy's 22 completions. He caught both of them for 43 yards. So that's where the other yardage and completions come from. Yeah, it was very condensed into 3 guys. I mean, as a guy, as someone who has Brandon Ayuk, something I like to see, people who have George Kittle, you like to see. I mean, this is what you want. You want everything condensed down to Ayuk, Kittle, and CMC, as long as Debo, and not unfortunately, but Debo will be back after the bye. So you're going to have to add him into that equation. But if the Niners can pick it up, then it's still going to be great. It's just great to see the guys like Ronnie Bell, Juwan Jennings, and Ray McLeod not have too much involvement and the main chunk go to the important guys. You like to see it. Thank you, Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Fantasy players appreciate performances like that outside of the 2 interceptions. But yeah, that'll be all for that one.
Yeah. I don't even have anything to add. The Niners and Bengals, you know the guys you're going to start, and you start them. It's
very simple at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, the Niners defense is I don't know if you could really can you play them right now? Obviously not right now. They're on a bye.
No, I know, but yeah, they've been very
post-bye. Can you play them?
I don't know.
I mean, with the Chase Young edition, maybe, that gives them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, wow.
They've been getting torched.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something, we'll cover coming, into week 10. We'll talk about that more. But, yeah, as of right now, I mean, yeah, it has not looked good. And, speaking of things that look way worse than not good, is the Kansas City Chiefs scoring 9 points in Denver against the Broncos.
I have a little. So I've been saying that I don't think the Chiefs are the same juggernaut. And granted, this was a division game. My Ravens lost a bad division game to the Steelers. But let's not forget, this is the Denver Broncos we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on?
Yeah. I mean, watch, as I get into this, you'll realize how ugly this game was. Me and Schiff had spoke about this. 3 Chiefs fantasy players had over 10, one of those being the Chiefs defense, which had 12. Travis Kelce 11.8 and Butker 11. Only 3 Chiefs players above 10 fantasy points. Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying this hasn't happened before, but I can't remember another game where he did not throw a touchdown. But it happened against the Broncos. He was 24 of 38, 241 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks, 3 carries for 20 yards, 7.64 fantasy points. Again, I'm not saying it as a fact, but was this the worst fantasy performance we've ever seen from Mahomes as a starter? I mean, possibly. Like, this is terrible for Mahomes standards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was only mentioned like 100 times during the broadcast that it was his very first road loss in the AFC West and his first loss to the Broncos altogether.
Mm-hmm.
What a horrible fashion.
No, absolutely. And I mean, when we break down players like Pacheco on the ground, 8 carries for 40 yards, 3 catches for -3 yards. I know we love stats like that. They're just hilarious. On 4 targets, 6.7 fantasy points, 54% of snaps. Travis Kelce, 6 catches, 58 yards on 9 targets, 11.8 fantasy points. I mean, that's not absolutely terrible, but again, you drafted him first round, so that's not great by any means at all. Rashee Rice is the only, he had a solid week. 5 targets, caught 4 of them, 56 yards, 9.6 fantasy points, played 61% of snaps. That's something we like to see from Rashee Rice. We don't really look at any of the other receivers. I mean, Justin Watson, 6.2 fantasy points, but big whoop. He's not a guy we're going to pick up or anything. MVS 2.7, Sky Moore 1.8, Hardman 1.6, Tony 1.1. That's what we talk about. All these guys are going to get a catch or two. Outside of Rashee Rice, he seems like the favorite target. But it was just a terrible week for the Chiefs. Obviously, we're still starting Mahomes every week. We're still starting Pacheco. We're still starting Travis Kelce. And I like the Rashee Rice start next week against the Dolphins as well. They did just have Jalen Ramsey return, so that secondary did get a bit better. But again, in a week that's kind of thin at receiver, if that's a pivot you have to make, I'm not mad at it. But, I mean, that's it. Yeah, the Chiefs shifts, was correct. The Chiefs do not look like the same juggernauts. Even some of their wins have been ugly wins. And it's just one of those things where when I get into the stats for the Broncos, you're going to be like, how did you lose this game? But it's because their offense just could not do anything.
Terrible, man.
Yeah,
Rashee Rice is not going to cut it at wide receiver 1 in the NFL.
No.
No,
No, he's not. He's like, I mean, he could be a wide receiver too, maybe, but it's just, yeah, they need a real threat there. I thought they would go out and try to get one, possibly like a DeAndre Hopkins, but again, the Titans
Nah, they got
decided to
McCole
hold.
Hardman. They're good.
Yeah, nah, exactly. And I mean, to go to the Broncos side of the ball, I mean, it wasn't crazy pretty by any means, but it got it done. Russ was 12 of 19 for 114 yards, 3 touchdowns on 12 completions, 0 interceptions, 8 rushes for 30 yards, 17.56 fantasy points. We saw Russ be very ugly his first time against the Chiefs. This was better touchdown wise, but I mean 114 yards through the air is not very good. They have a bye and then they'll come back and play Buffalo. So we'll see. Someone that we were very happy to see take a step forward is Javonte Williams. He is looking healthier than he has this entire season. The past 2 weeks, we've seen his snap share go up and up. Last week was his first time above 50%, and he played 53%. This week, he played 63%. He carried the ball 27 times, an absurd amount, for 85 yards, so not very efficient. He caught 3 passes for 13 yards on 3 targets, caught a touchdown, 18.8 fantasy points for Javonte Williams. He's finally here. And I mean, they're going to go into the bye, and then they're going to play the Bills. The Bills aren't the best against the rush by any means. I like the Javonte start come week 10. I just feel like, he's ramping up and up. These are his back-to-back double-digit weeks. Depends what your running back room looks like. If you're really set on running back, this is a chance to sell Javonte high. It's one of those things. He's starting to look healthy. And with Samaje Perine kind of fading into the abyss a little bit, I mean, this is his 3rd week in a row with 25% snap share or below, and that's because Jaleel McLaughlin is kind of sharing a little bit. He only played 11% of snaps. Jaleel had 5.9, Samaje Perine had 4.1. Neither of these guys are really going to spell Javonte to a big degree. And then your receivers, when you only complete 12 catches or 12 passes, 3 of them being to Javonte, I mean, you can imagine, But your two big names caught touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy, 2 catches for 50 yards on 6 targets, a touchdown, 13 fantasy points. Solid. Can't be mad at that. Courtland Sutton, 2 catches for 29 yards, only 3 targets, a touchdown, 10.9. And I mean, the first time they played him was ugly. Courtland Sutton has now caught 6 touchdowns in 8 games. That is mind-blowing to me. He caught 2 touchdowns the past 2 seasons. He's a red zone threat. When they score a touchdown, more than likely, it is probably going to Courtland Sutton. So, the Broncos aren't giving up. I'll give them that. They're not giving up. Marvin Mims is completely irrelevant. Their tight ends did not catch a pass this game. Their defense had 18 fantasy points. I'm sure no one started them against the Chiefs, but
that's insane.
Yeah. Broncos go into a bye. We'll cover them more, what we think about their matchup when we get closer to week 10 against the Bills, but wasn't a crazy pretty week for anyone on the Broncos fantasy-wise other than Javonte Williams, but they got the job done and beat the defending champs.
Yes, they did. That was good to see.
Yeah.
Love to see the Chiefs lose.
Absolutely.
All right. With that one, we will get into God forbidden Sunday night matchup where they sent the Bears to die in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The Bears managed to put up 13 points and lost by 17. Yeah. Tyson Badgett played the whole game, 25 for 37, 232 yards, 2 interceptions, 4 rushing attempts, a negative yard. I don't know how the hell people managed to do four rushing attempts, a negative yard, a rushing touchdown, and a fumble. Incredible stat lines that we saw this week. Incredible.
It's just like
13.2 fantasy points. Just like, how do you do that?
yeah.
We said it was going to be disgusting in the Bears' backfield, as it was. Roschon Johnson came back and muddled everything right up.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, there were 4 Bears running backs to receive over 10% snap share. Darrington Evans got 27%. Kyrie Blasingame got 21%. 14 snaps he's on the field. Kyrie Blasingame didn't do anything, but he was out there. Darrington Evans out there for 18 snaps, gets 4 attempts, 18 yards, 3 catches on 4 targets, 22 yards, 1 rushing touchdown for 13 points. Darrington Evans, not Roschon Johnson, not Deontay Foreman, but Darrington Evans was the one who produced out of the Bears' backfield.
Yeah.
And incredibly enough, it was just, I just have the things that happen on the side of the Bears this week, just, I have no explanation for. You have 2 weeks of Tyson Bagent with Cole Kmet, and Cole Kmet looks like he's absolutely dust. And then he comes out and gets 10 catches on 10 targets for 79 yards.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do with that? I don't know. We saw 2 weeks in a row. Like, is it going to continue like this? I don't know. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he gets 0, and then like 2, and then 17.9. It's, and then the Roschon Johnson, Deontay Foreman, Darrington Evans, and Deontay Foreman had the most rushing attempts with 9, and he only got 34 yards.
Yeah.
Roschon had 6 for 21. Roschon also caught 3 passes on 4 targets for 10 yards. He had 6.1 points. He led the snaps for the Bears. I think it might fall into him taking the backfield over, kind of.
Yeah.
But then they also have Khalil Herbert coming off of IR at a certain point. So
it's ugly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Bears running backs are just not fun right now.
No.
But DJ Moore, 4 of 6, 55 yards, 9.5. Darnell Mooney caught a 41-yard pass on the first play from scrimmage for Chicago. No, yeah, that's it.
Nice. Yeah.
So, yeah. The Bears are what we thought they were.
Is that all you had for the Bears?
I don't want to talk about them anymore.
I mean, it was slightly more exciting on the Chargers side of the ball. They had some solid fantasy weeks. Justin Herbert lit it up, 31 of 40, 298 yards, 3 touchdowns. Rushed it 1 time for a single yard. Had to add that in there. 24.02 fantasy points. Solid Justin Herbert week, what we expected going against the Bears. Chargers still don't know how to run the ball efficiently. 15 carries for Austin Eckler, 29 yards. What we love about him is the pass catching. 7 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets, 23.3 fantasy points, 67% of snaps. Austin Eckler is back, at least receiving-wise. We'll see. But we've seen before where the Chargers can't run the ball efficiently. He can still have amazing fantasy days like he just had. So Austin Eckler, by all means, is back. Keenan Allen, honestly a pedestrian day for going against the Bears. I mean, a solid week, though. 8 catches, 69 yards on 10 targets, 14.9. I mean, book it, you know? He got you 15 points, solid week. You're obviously starting him every single week. It is what it is. Josh Palmer injured his knee in this game. He caused him to leave. He did return. He is getting it examined, so we're going to see the severity and, you know, if he will possibly miss time, but we just don't know at this point in time. He had
Yeah.
3 catches for 24 yards on 4 targets, 5.4 fantasy points, played 68% of snaps. Again, we're going to have to monitor that. And we finally saw Quentin Johnston actually get some looks. And what did he do with them? He turned 6 targets into 5 catches for 50 yards, 10 points flat, played 70% of snaps. His first double-digit game. His first game getting more than 20 yards receiving. If Josh Palmer does happen to miss a week, we will possibly see that door open for Quentin Johnston. Maybe he can become a viable part of the offense. But I do like seeing him getting snaps, and I do like seeing him get targets more than the snaps. I do not want to butcher the name, but Simi Fehoko. Had to shout him out. 1 catch, 9 yards, touchdown. Book it. 7.9 fantasy points. And then the other one that we talked about was Parham. With Gerald Everett missing, Donald Parham stepped into that tight end 1 role and had a solid week. 4 catches, 43 yards on 5 targets, a touchdown, 14.3 fantasy points, 62% of snaps. Him and Gerald Everett are both very capable. It's just when they're both healthy, it's hard to tell. Like, Gerald Everett's technically the number 1, but they kind of like spell each other where one of them's going to catch a touchdown but have 1 catch, and that's the touchdown. Then the other one will have 3 catches for 30 yards, but that's it. It's hard to tell with those two. You just don't know which one of them is going to get in the end zone, but more than likely one of them is. Just don't know. But I mean, that's it. You know, the Chargers will take on the Jets next week. We expected the Chargers players to have good fantasy days against the Bears, and they did. And we know who to start on the Chargers, you know? It's Herbert, it's Eckler, it's Allen, and then you get a little hairy now with Palmer. We'll see how he is with the injury. Quentin Johnston, I don't feel comfortable starting. Even if Josh Palmer misses, it's just, I don't know. I want to see another game where he can give me double-digit fantasy points before I plug him in over other options, like a, you know, I'm just saying, like a Rashee Rice, a guy that we've seen at least consistently get some sort of volume.
Yeah,
but that's all I had for that game.
Yeah, we can move it right along then into...
Let me kick it off.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Monday night game. Before we get into it, any Niner fan, because we're on the West Coast, a lot of Niner fans, a lot of Raider fans. Any Niner fan that lied to me, to you, to anyone that said Jimmy Garoppolo was a better quarterback than Derek Carr, shame on you. Shame on you for lying. So obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is bad at football. He's a system quarterback. Josh McDaniels is not a good head coach. Fire him. Right now. Cut Jimmy mid-season. I don't care. Start Aiden O'Connell. It's terrible. It's terrible. The Raiders are looking terrible. In a game where their defense, their defense gets a pick 6 to bring it within 2, and then the Lions drive the field, and they cause a fumble at the goal line and give the Raiders opportunity again. And Jimmy G can't get the ball to the arguably the best receiver in the league. What?
Yeah, they should have traded Josh Jacobs, actually.
They should have.
He's gonna be a free agent next year, and they should have got some compensation. There's no way he doesn't walk after this.
It's bad. Jimmy G,
it is.
10 of 21, 126 yards, an interception, 2 rushes for 12 yards, 5.24 fantasy points. We're obviously not starting him. The one Raider that had a solid fantasy week was Josh Jacobs. 15 carries, 61 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 27 yards, 4 targets, 16.8 fantasy points. The Raiders' leading receiver, Hunter Renfrow, 4 targets, 2 catches, 19 yards, 3.9 fantasy points, 61% of snaps. Devontae Adams, 7 targets, caught 1 of them for 11 yards, 2.1 fantasy points. The past 4 weeks for Devontae Adams, 8.5, 4.9, 12.7, 2.1. They play the Giants next week, and
He
I'm
should
over.
have had a 90-yard and a
He's
60-yard.
wide. Oh, it's just unbelievable the inability of Jimmy
It's
G to
not even
stretch the
real.
field. It's
The
incredible.
one made sense more because he's about to get hit in the end zone. So I understand why that ball kind of sails out of bounds. The other one that would have been a 60-yard touchdown, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. And as someone who has Devontae Adams, I mean, I put him on the trade block just to see what kind of offers I can get, see what I'll entertain. Obviously, it's
It's
at a
not
point
there.
where no, and it's at a point where if you can get another good wide receiver off of Devontae's name value, I'm not selling him for like a Christian Kirk or anything like that. Like, don't get me wrong, but
It's bad. It's bad. It's bad when guys like, and I'm being serious, like if Deontay Johnson or someone like that stays healthy, they just get more volume. Like it's how many more weeks can we have single digit Devontae Adams games? There's probably going to be more. It's just we'll have to see. I like holding
I really
Devontae.
wish they would have traded him.
I like holding him fantasy wise only because if McDaniels does keep his job for Mark Tavis, please don't let him. But if he does, you cannot continue to start Jimmy G if he plays like this. Like Jimmy G has to be benched. It just and Aiden O'Connell will throw the ball. So we'll have to see.
Yeah,
But it's fair to say, look at what you can get for Devontae off name value. And the other target there, who's been very consistent, Jacoby Myers, got one target, caught it, 19 yards, 2.9 fantasy points. Michael Mayer played 91. Let me confirm that. Sorry, my handwriting's sloppy. I don't know if that says 91 or 71. 91% of snaps. Two targets, caught one of them, 19 yards, 2.9 fantasy points. The second highest scorer for the Raiders. The only other person, Josh Jacobs, 16.8. Raiders defense, 15. The next highest guy is Jimmy G with 5.2. It's absolutely terrible. This is a Raider team where, like Devontae and Jacoby, we talked their must starts every week. They're playing the Giants in Vegas next week, possibly against Danny DeVito. And yeah, I called him that on purpose. Against Danny DeVito. And I'm not confident starting them. What are we talking about? It's just take us to the Lions, please. It's a dumpster fire. It's worse than it's ever been. I don't even understand. I can't do it.
yeah, having Devontae Adams in fantasy sucks right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, going on to the Lions side of the ball, it was a better day. Jared Goff, kind of a pedestrian performance. 26 for 37, 272 yards, a touchdown, an interception, 2 rushing attempts for -2 yards, 13.7 points. Nothing to write home about. Jahmyr Gibbs played 70% of the snaps, had his breakout game.
Yeah.
If you thought it was last week, you were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It was this week. Jahmyr Gibbs went for, let me see, 152 yards on the ground on 26 attempts, 1 touchdown, caught 5 passes for 37 yards. And that put him, I want to check and make sure I'm right with the app, at 29.9 fantasy points, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Great game for him. They're going on the bye. David Montgomery's probably going to come back. I mean, if you look at what Craig Reynolds got, 14 attempts, 74 yards, had 1 catch for 12 yards. I think if you take Jahmyr Gibbs' receiving work and give it to Craig Reynolds, this is what we can see if David Montgomery comes back healthy. Montgomery getting the upwards of 20, like 25 or so, maybe 30 carries, because they said they want to give him that. The huge yardage, the rushing touchdowns. And I mean, Craig Reynolds still had 7.6 fantasy points. He lost a fumble, so he would have been at 9.6. Craig Reynolds also got in the end zone at the end of the game. Or did he not? Was I could be completely wrong about that. I actually don't think he did. No. He
No.
got close.
No.
No, it was a flag. It got
Oh
called
yeah.
back.
Yeah.
That I remember now. But yeah, so I mean, seeing 14 attempts and probably like 5 or 6 targets for Jahmyr Gibbs every week, that would be great. At
Mhm.
least 10 attempts. Like if he could touch the ball 15 times or so a week with David Montgomery out there, I think that'll still be great.
Yeah.
Sam Laporta, 8 catches, 10 targets, 57 yards, a touchdown. Dude just proves to be a top tight end option every single week. Amon Ra, 6 catches on 9 targets, 108 yards, 16.8 fantasy points. Some people would have loved to see him get just a little bit more, but still had a good week nonetheless. Josh Reynolds, 1 catch for 13 yards, and he lost a fumble, giving him 0.3 fantasy points. His worst week it was very bad.
Yeah.
Aside from the week where he practically didn't play. Khalif Raymond got 2 catches on 4 targets for 24 yards, 1 rushing attempt for -2 yards, putting him at 4.2 points. I mean, Jameson Williams, 2 catches on 3 targets for 16 yards. I think Jameson Williams is a guy that I'd like to roster over Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, so on down the line. The Lions did just trade for Donovan Peoples-Jones, which was interesting.
I guess to fill Marvin Jones.
Yeah.
I guess.
Still interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Jameson Williams it in just because the young talent. And Lions defense scored 13 points. Kicker scored 16. Yeah, the Raiders. No, I'd rather not talk about it anymore.
It's bad.
We'll just,
It's so bad.
yeah. We'll move right into our waiver wire, which we talked about. We have San Francisco, Jacksonville, Detroit, and Denver all on bye this week. A lot of very, considerable pieces on all of those teams. And to start it off with the quarterbacks, it is ugly, but I have Baker Mayfield at Houston. We saw Baker Mayfield have some success on Thursday Night Football against the Bills. And if you're in need of a quarterback, I don't think too many people were starting Purdy, but I know people were starting Goff. People were starting Lawrence.
Cousins.
So, Cousins is gone.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Baker's not a terrible option this.
Yeah. No, and my quarterback start of the week is going to be Derek Carr. They're playing the Bears. Derek Carr has thrown for 300 yards at least in the last 3 games, where he finished with 17, 18, and then 18 fantasy points. He's been consistent. They're getting it done through the air. It is the Bears. It's just a favorable matchup where if you got to plug him in, due to a quarterback being on bye, due to losing Cousins, whatever the reason may be, Derek Carr is a safe option for a guy that can get you, a solid fantasy week. He's not going to give you 30, but he should be able to give you, 17 to 20.
Yeah, I think he could top out like 18, 20.
Yeah.
With my running back this week, I probably like the same one I had last week was Emari Demercado playing against Cleveland. We saw him get the 20 rushing attempts this past week, and we've seen 2 weeks in a row. Very good rushing defense in Cleveland has given up a decent amount on the ground. Demercado looked good. They are starting a rookie quarterback for the first time this year. I think they're going to be running the ball a lot. I think Demercado should have some volume. Maybe he has a little bit of success, catches a couple out of the backfield. As far as the guys on the waiver wire this week, he's probably my favorite option.
Yeah. And then my option, who I was hoping the Rams signed weeks ago, but shout out Darrell Henderson. It was Myles Gaskin at the time who got signed, but Leonard Fournette signed to the Bills on the practice squad, will obviously be elevated to the active roster sooner than later. It comes down to, is he being signed to make it a 3 running back just muddled situation, or is he being signed to take over the backup for Latavius Murray, who has been not very good. Leonard Fournette offers upside through the air. We saw, he had a solid season last season with the Bucks. He kind of declined a little bit with his rushing efficiency, but again, the Bills are a different team, a very successful team. I'm excited to see how he gets plugged in here. His volume, I'm not sure of what we're going to see when, the first couple weeks or even at any point. But when I look at guys on the waiver, like Demercado is a very good waiver pickup. But when James Conner comes back, it's like we know he's a rental. We've spoke about it. We all know it's a rental when James Conner comes back. Fournette offers an upside kind of like a Kareem Hunt that I can see. Possibly.
It's possible.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like to roll the dice on.
That's fair.
If I'm going to, There's not too many running backs out there on the waiver wire. It's slim pickings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I might prefer, if you need a guy for this week, I guess I prefer a guy like Singletary.
Yeah, 100%.
Or like Cam Akers, but yeah, down the line. But my wide receiver this week that I have is Jonathan Mingo, and he will be playing the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen 2 games of his involvement going up. He was on the field 99% of the time this past week. The Colts have given up a lot on defense, so I think he should be a good start. And even if he doesn't necessarily get it done this week, I like him for the rest of the year as just a guy to hold on to, kind of an emergency piece that you can throw in, might be able to get you like 10 points. As I said earlier, it seems like the direction that the Panthers are going in heavily involves Jonathan Mingo. So,
yeah. No, and I'm going to stick on the trend of rookie receivers. Mine's Demario Douglas. They obviously lost Kendrick Bourne for the season. In the past 2 games, Demario's been ramped up pretty heavily. He's seen 13 targets and caught 9 of them in the past 2 games. And next week, they play the Commanders, who before today, I was like, dang, Mac Jones is going to have no time to throw because his O-line is not very good. And then the Commanders said, we'll do you a favor and trade our defensive ends. So Demario Douglas should, I'm going to say should because I don't know for certain, but he should be able to step into at least the wide receiver 2, if not the wide receiver 1 there. Juju has not been healthy. Devonta Parker is not. It's just not. And I mean, Tyquan Thornton hasn't panned. It's right there for the taking for Demario Douglas. He's becoming a favorite target for Mac Jones, and he's a guy I like this week. And the Commanders' secondary is bad. They have not been good. So.
Yeah, I'll take that right into my tight end, who for this week, honestly, I'd say my start for a guy that I would pick up off the waiver wire would be Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
If he's on the waiver wire, I'd pick him up, start him this week. But a guy that I like kind of for the rest of the year also is Trey McBride with Zach Ertz going down. Kyler is supposed to be coming back, and Trey McBride looked very good in the last game against the Ravens, was catching almost everything that came his way. And yeah, I think he's a very good option. And then I just wanted to finish off on my end with, for a defense that I like this week, I have the Saints facing the Bears.
Oh, yeah.
At home. They're currently the 13th ranked fantasy defense right now. And also for a kicker in that same game, I have Blake Grupe versus Chicago. He is currently the 7th ranked fantasy kicker.
And we know Derek Carr in red zone.
Yes.
It's been a thing. So yeah, my last tight end, or my last player's tight end, Logan Thomas, going into New England. He had one bad week where he put up 1.2 fantasy points on the season. Other than that, his lowest week is 7.3. He has been fairly consistent at that tight end position. He's currently the tight end 10 with guys like Kittle on bye, Evan Ingram on bye. There's openings there for, a need at the tight end position. He's a guy like the Commanders throw the ball like none other. They throw the ball so much, and he's one of the targets there. So I like Logan Thomas.
All right. And yeah, that'll do it for this one, guys. We will be back on, let's see, we got to do all the previews tomorrow. And that's tomorrow. because today is Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm losing track of days at this point, but we will be back with you guys tomorrow for the preview, for our starts and sits. We will have the head-to-head for you, and there's much more to come, so stay tuned. Any questions, any problems you guys may have, if you need some advice, like for what's going on in your league, whatever the questions may be, we're always here for you. Any platform you guys want to hit us up on, we will get back to you in a timely manner, and thank you once again for all the support.
Yes, sir. Come back next time. Take more reps with the first team.
Yes.